Hello, my name is Gusti Agung Masgitha. I'm from Diplomacy 4. Now I'm going to explain about my theoretical framework on China's investment in Belt and Road Initiative, debt trap diplomacy case of Hambantota port in Sri Lanka. So here is the conceptual diagram of my theoretical framework. The first one is independent variable, China's investment and loans in BRI as the economic diplomacy, and then dependent variable, China's debt trap in Sri Lanka as the debt trap diplomacy, and both of the variables can be explained by soft power theory. So here is the conceptual and operationalization of independent variable. The first one is conceptual definition of economic diplomacy. Economic diplomacy is the arrangement process of decision-making and negotiation of policy that relate to the topics on international economic relation. The topic of this arrangement concern on international financial, negotiation of trade and investment, and the development of international policies. So therefore, economic diplomacy means that a state foreign policy that relates to its international economic relation with other states with the objective is to achieve their common interests in economic field. And then operational definition of economic diplomacy. According to Woolcock and Bain, there are three indicators as the measurement of economic diplomacy. The first one is negotiation. The negotiation process between Chinese and Sri Lankan government regarding global investment and lending programs. China insists that its policy on the Belt and Road Initiative through investment in Hambantota port is purely for business interests. Second, voluntary cooperation. Through the implementation of the BRI, China utilized the foreign exchange with more profitable investment in foreign countries and establishes more cooperation with developing countries such as Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is willing to cooperate with China, who gives them solution for its economy and receive amount of loans for infrastructure. The third is the creation and enforcement of binding rules. Economic diplomacy by China resolved a bilateral agreement between China's and Sri Lanka government. Both states began negotiation on FTA in November 2014, and Sri Lanka conceived that it would provide better access of world export market and attract investment to the country. So the concept of economic diplomacy theory is accordance with China's foreign policy through Belt and Road Initiative, in which the topic of this foreign economic policy is about the negotiation regarding the international financial and negotiation of trade and investment in Sri Lanka. So the next part is about the conceptual and operationalization of dependent variable. So the conceptual definition of debt trap diplomacy according to Adriashah and Wu, debt trap diplomacy is a strategy when a state lends an amount of money to a borrower state and aim to gain financial or political concessions when the borrower state cannot repay. And then operational definition of debt trap diplomacy according to journal by Wibisono, there are three stages as the indicator of debt trap diplomacy defined by Parker and Savage. The first one is investment. China's investment of BRI in Sri Lanka is conducted through the infrastructure investment of Hambantota port. The first and main loan of this port infrastructure is funded by the Export-Import Bank or Exim Bank as China's state bank, which funded for $307 million. And then second, detrimental effect of construction and operation. Most of the economic return and benefit of Hambantota port directed back to China, which make debt repayment more difficult for Sri Lanka and cause the state become more dependent with China. And then the third is economic or political influences as debt collections. China's political intervention and close relation with Sri Lanka Prime Minister has succeeded to trap Sri Lanka under the high interest debt and large infrastructure project of Hambantota port, in which the port is leased to China for 99 years as the debt concession and China has the control over the areas. So the theory of debt trap diplomacy is certainly useful in accordance with China's debt trap case in Sri Lanka. The indicator of this theory could answer and explain the debt trap case because actually the term of this theory was firstly created to define China policy of BRI in several countries in the world, which at the end became a debt trap case. And then the next part is about the relationship between independent variable and dependent variable. So according to Joseph Nye, he defines that soft power is an indirect way of state to exercise its power with the ability to get the other to want what you want, where the state utilizes its intangible resources such as culture, ideology, and institution rather than a coercive way. China's implementation of Belt and Road Initiative as its foreign economic policy, which causes debt trap diplomacy, will affect China's economic influences and control over the Sri Lanka government. Within China's power control for Hambantota port in Sri Lanka, the state able to secure the South Asia trade route as an important maritime Silk Road. And the next part is the scope and limitation of study. So the research will put China's investment and loans in BRI as the independent variable that has the role which affects the debt trap diplomacy in Sri Lanka as the dependent variable. And then the research mainly focus on the role of economic diplomacy in implementation by China through BRI as China's foreign economic diplomacy conducted in Sri Lanka. And China's investment in Hambantota port, which result in a debt trap diplomacy for Sri Lanka, become the main case of the research. And then the discussion begins since China's involvement in Sri Lanka through BRI infrastructure investment in Hambantota port in 2015 until the fall of the port into Chinese hands in 2017. So that's all from my presentations. Thank you.